Hello, my lovelies. I am so glad to see you this week. I hope you all are doing well. Hope you have a wonderful drink that you enjoy and are getting ready to just snuggle in with us for an hour to talk about some important information. Hi, Marcia. Hi, Dawn. Thank you very much for joining me in the chat. That always is great encouragement to me. Thank you very much. I have a question to discuss that has nothing to do with what our topic is today. As I was, wrapping up the last couple of minutes of everything, getting my tea, and of course it's spearmint tea again. Thank you, Linda, for those bags of tea. I still have several sitting there, so exciting. Anyway, I was thinking, you know what? I wonder what everybody else would, how they would answer that question. And I think it would be an interesting psychology research study, or at least looking up what studies have been done on it. Here's the question. Are you ready? What type of TV shows do you watch and why? Now, a second way for me to word that is when you have absolutely no agenda for why you turn on the TV, like there's nothing that you need to watch, or it's not compulsory in any way. It's not your habit, anything. What is it that you would turn on? Well, this could even go to years ago or nowadays, because the structure of the channels and the viewing and even the way that we watch TV anymore has changed so drastically from, 20, 30 years ago. It's just very, very different. So these are some categories that I was just thinking about. Would you want to watch game shows? Those things were so big. There were so many quite entertaining game shows on, especially in the 80s, or reality shows. I don't really get into those very much personally, but I know that some people very much do. How about the competition shows like America's Got Talent, or So You Think You Can Dance? That was a big one for my family. And actually now I'm proving myself wrong on the whole. I don't like reality TV shows. But, and another thing that my kids and I used to watch every Tuesday night was Biggest Loser. And I questioned, anyway, that it was a very entertaining show. So we would sit there with our ice cream and our pizza and watch Biggest Loser every week. But I would love to hear what you guys like to watch when you have nothing to do and you decide, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to turn the TV on. I'll give you my answer here in a little bit after we get a little more engagement in the chat about the whole thing. But so thank you very much for joining. Today we're going to be talking about how to lose weight without, I forget what I called this video. I'm so sorry. Without cutting back. Yeah, how to lose weight without cutting back. There are lots of things that are true about the way that we eat and the potential damage or good that it can do. Depending on, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so Marcia, Call the Midwife, NCIS, no reality, no game shows, podcasts, but not the old style talk shows. Oh, the old style talk shows like Oprah and Sarah Jesse Raphael or something. Oh, hospital and cop dramas for Dawn. Yeah. The competition shows. Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of fun to watch those. It seems like those they have gotten quite, the competition shows have, I don't know, what do you say? They're overdone. I guess when you have 23 seasons of a particular competition show or whatever, then maybe whatever. It's nice to have the usual that you can go back to. But, okay. Anywho, that's super interesting to hear from you guys. My favorite thing to watch on TV when I don't have an agenda, when I'm not trying to catch up on whatever it is that I'm trying to do research on YouTube or whatever, if I don't have a reason for it. I find myself trying to meet my social needs, which is kind of crazy, but I like to watch. I decide what environment I would want myself to be in. So that is the TV show or whatever that I want to watch. So I do Big Bang Theory a lot, a lot. And then sometimes talk shows, they can be news related. Of course, with the presidential election that happened a couple of months ago, I got hooked into some of those talk shows. But as soon as they start arguing or talking on top of each other, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm done, and have to change to something else. One of my favorite things through the years has been to watch anything that's like a large group of friends who work together as a team to solve a problem. And, they poke fun at each other, much like siblings would or whatever. So Fast and the Furious is really good for that. If I need to get something done and I'm having a really hard time with motivation, then I turn on something like Rocky and just keeping them one after the other. It's a lot of fun. I generally don't go all the way back to Rocky 1, and I don't go past Rocky 4, because after a while, I don't like that they lost all the money and everything and what they did with the plot. So no, thank you. Are you guys into that too? You like any of those 80s bigger than life type movies? I sure do. Action is my favorite. Oh, and you know what? I have to say the Avengers because, Marvel's the best. That actually is one of my first conversational thing. Well, if I meet somebody that I might possibly be interested in, I have to ask, okay, Marvel or DC? And so far, every time it's been Marvel, but nothing has worked out. Anyway, Marvel is way better than DC. Fight me if you want. Oh, Dawn, good. I'm glad that you're into those movies too. We have a lot to talk about. Okay. Well, last week we were talking a lot about the blah of January, and I was recognizing it in myself a lot this last week. And so, I'm trying to pay attention better to it. Any of you having any actual issues with that? It might not perhaps be something that you'd want to talk about in the chat, but I think it would be interesting to know. I'm a pretty upbeat person. Generally push forward through whatever feelings for the most part. Sometimes feelings get too big and you have to stare them down and figure things out and all that. But it's been a little overwhelming, even though I've had an entire month off of my schooling. I go back tomorrow, so that should be fun. But yeah, that was kind of tricky. Anyhow, one of the things we were talking about last week was New Year's resolutions. I understand completely people using New Year's resolutions and setting goals, all of that. Of course, that I'm a life coach. I completely understand goal setting and everything. But just because it's the new year, I tend to lean away from that, and I would rather see daily progress. Like Atomic Habits. Oh, I actually have that here. Atomic Habits. We're starting this book club on Tuesday in person, so that'll be a lot of fun. If any of you wanted to start a virtual book club about Atomic Habits, I'm happy to get it arranged. Just let me know about it. Okay. And of course, you can go to coachamypratt.com and message me there, and it doesn't matter where you live, obviously, if you wanted to do that. We could study it together and just have a great time. But anyway, that's what I mean. I don't really do New Year's resolutions a whole lot. I'd rather do incremental daily, weekly progress. Much more important to me. So this Glucose Revolution is the book that we're going to be talking about today. And that is this one. I'm pretty skeptical of a person. As soon as somebody starts sounding conspiracy theorist, or I don't know, like they're selling snake oil, I back way, way, way off instantly. I like traditional science, things that are solidly proven, all of that. But this is an excellent book, and this is basically what we're going to be talking about today. I would fight against people, and not really fight, but push back against people who would say sugar is so bad for you. And I thought, well, I've never had any trouble. I don't know what you're talking about. My mom, when she passed away almost 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago, she was not overweight. She did a good job keeping her weight within a good range at all times, but she had type 2 diabetes, and she loved her sweets. So she always had Werther's butterscotches, in her room. And she ended up with, I don't think she would mind me saying at all. Yeah, she ended up with liver cancer, which was strange because she never in her entire life had any kind of a drink. But she died at 93 and a half. And I propose that a lot of her liver issues are because of glucose spikes. Has nothing to do with weight. It's more like, your blood sugar just spiking. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We'll start off with the dangers that happen from glucose spikes, and then we'll talk about how glucose spikes happen. And then we'll talk about how to fix that trend. And one of the wonderful, the products of eating correctly, not changing what you eat, but the order in which you eat it, how much of a difference that makes in everything that can go wrong with sugar spikes, and also how weight just starts falling off. It's amazing. And I can attest to that. So, all right. Anybody have any questions about anything so far? Anything else to say about the types of TV shows? Oh, I was trying to remember the name. Oh, Password TV show. That was a lot of fun. Long time ago. I remember talking to somebody about that recently. It was interesting. Okay. Well, anyway, let's get on this. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a drink of my spearmint tea because I'm thirsty. What do you guys have to drink? Dawn, do you happen to have your Diet Pepsi? Okay. In the chat. Oh, really? You have iced tea, huh? I'm shifting it up. All right. The woman who wrote this book, Jessie Incauspé, she is French, actually from France, kind of French. Okay, Marcia. Nothing to drink right now. Got it. Yep. She has a YouTube channel. I don't know if it's through another source, whatever, but it's called Glucose Goddess. And I put that link in the description, as well as the information about this book is in the description if you'd like to read it. So thank you very much, by the way. I wanted to just emphasize something for a second before I actually dig into the book. I really appreciate being able to watch a live stream podcast and just get to know the people that are there. I know that I'm the only one that you can see my face. You can hear me talking. You can hear my opinions, and you can watch what's happening in the chat and engage in that. To me, that's what matters. And that's why I don't hit the ground running. A lot of the trends I see for people that have pretty successful podcasts, they chop off like the very first part of their first word and they dig right in and they're bam, 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 bam. My points are made and then done. I'd rather not do that. I don't want to have that kind of a paced podcast. I'd rather we just be some friends that we hang out. We drink together and we talk. Oh, cool. Okay, Marcia and Dawn, that's great. Very nice. Maybe we could consider going through a book study of this after we're done with this. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Although I don't think we're going to be able to get the guys in on the glucose revolution. Okay, so let's talk about glucose spikes and how they are harmful. And then, like I said, we'll go back to talk about why they happen. Okay, page 41, in case you're wondering. Free radicals and oxidative stress. Imagine this. Your grandfather, finally retiring after a long career, is able to fulfill his dream of working on a steam train. Everyone in the family thinks he's crazy for doing it, but he doesn't care. After some training, he enlists as a stoker in a train engine's room. His job is to shovel coal onto the fire to generate the steam that pushes the pistons and makes the wheels of the train turn. He's the mitochondria of the train, if you will. Periodically through the day, as the train speeds along the tracks, coal is delivered to your grandfather. He places it by the furnace and shovels it into the flames at a steady pace to fuel the process that moves the train. The raw material is converted to energy. And when the stock is used up, another batch is promptly supplied. Just like the train, our cells hum along smoothly when the amount of energy that is provided matches up with the amount of energy needed to function. Now it's the second day of your grandfather's new job. A few minutes after the first delivery of coal, he gets a surprising knock on the door. More coal. He thinks, well, it's a bit early, but that way I'll have some extra. He sets it aside next to the furnace. A few minutes later, another knock, more coal, and another. The knocks keep coming and the coal keeps being delivered. I don't need all of this, he says, but he's told that it's his job to burn it and he's given no other explanation. All day long, delivery after delivery, unnecessary coal is stuffed into his cabin. The coal being delivered far exceeds what is needed. Your grandfather can't burn the coal more quickly, so piles build up around him. In a short while, there's coal everywhere, stacked to the ceiling. He can barely move. He can't shovel any more coal onto the fire because there is so much in the way. The train stops and people get angry. At the end of the day, he quits, his dream sabotaged. Okay, I'll finish reading this little section and we'll list off a couple of the problems of having too much glucose in your system, which is called a glucose spike, in just a moment. All right, so mitochondria, I remember learning about that, and I wrote a paper about it in biology in high school, and I was in 9th grade, I want to say. Yeah, I was in 9th grade, yeah. Mitochondria feel the same way when we give them more glucose than they need. They can only burn as much glucose as the cell needs for energy and not more. When we spike, we deliver glucose to our cells too quickly. There's that word, spike, right? So keep getting too much to it too quickly. The speed at which it is delivered is the issue. Too much at once and problems pile up. All right. According to the latest scientific theory, and by the way, this book was only written, well, it's 2025 now, so 3 years ago. She says, according to the latest scientific theory, the allostatic load model, when our mitochondria are drowning in unnecessary glucose, tiny molecules with large consequences are released. And here's this term that you hear all the time in all sorts of commercials, but you have never had any idea what they're talking about. Free radicals, okay? Free radicals. When free radicals appear because of a spike, they set off a dangerous chain reaction. This is directly impacting, or has directly impacted my life. So let's talk about it. Free radicals are a big deal because anything they touch, they damage. That's inflammation. Okay. So if you have free radicals because of glucose spikes, which means that your cells get too much glucose so fast that they can't use it all, then you get the free radicals, and they do their damage. This is interesting. They randomly snap, they meaning the free radicals, and modify our genetic code, meaning our DNA, creating mutations that activate harmful genes and can lead to the development of cancer. I'm pretty well convinced that the reason why I went through my own cancer, 2 years of cancer stuff, which was, wow, that was rough. Thank God I'm cancer free now, for anybody who doesn't know that. But I believe that that has a lot to do with glucose spikes. By the way, my type of cancer, it was melanoma. And I know that you have to have some sun exposure for that. But considering the amount of sun exposure I've had in my life, which is, substantial, I should not. Anyway, it doesn't make sense. Stress that I was under for so many years and the glucose spikes, I am positive, exacerbated the whole situation to make sure that I had cancer and it spread. So that was really scary. Okay, so when there are too many free radicals to be neutralized, our body is said to be in a state of oxidative stress. So that brings to mind already antioxidants, right? Blueberries, such like that. So, all right. Glucose spikes lead to backed up amounts of sugar in the cell, or excuse me, I shouldn't say sugar. I should say energy in the cell. And that becomes free radicals. And then the free radicals, if there are too many of them, the whole body ends up being in a state of oxidative stress. Oxidative stress, we already talked about cancer, oxidative stress is a driver of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, and general aging. And fructose, the sugar that you get from fruit, increases oxidative stress even more than just glucose alone. So that's interesting. That's one of the reasons that sweet foods, which contain fructose, are worse than starchy foods, which don't. Too much fat can also increase oxidative stress. Okay, so you can see why this is a really super important conversation for all of us to have. Just the way that we eat, the way that our lives, especially here in America, I've been outside of the country a couple of times, but not enough to speak for more than Americans. But in America, with the amount of stress that we put on ourselves, the way that we're working ourselves to death as a nation, I do my best to not do that. The way that we eat, I have all too many friends who eat through drive-thrus, which is kind of scary. And of course, the drive-thru is not a problem, I'm just saying as a regular thing. But if you take all of that, you're going to gain weight. You're going to gain weight really wrong. It's not going to be muscle if you're sitting around all the time. As a doctoral student, when I sit there in my recliner for many, many, many hours every day. And I have to remember I actually set my alarms so that I don't forget to get up, make sure my legs still move and get my blood pumping and, go get something to drink. And I try to eat on regular schedule, that kind of thing, and try to eat from my own kitchen, which is better. But so there's a really big problem. So if we have glucose spikes causing the free radicals, too many free radicals in the body end up causing oxidative stress overall, and oxidative stress causes heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, and general aging. Okay. This is a big problem. Okay. we're going to move on to glycation and inflammation. Okay. Okay. I think I'm going to get a running start on this instead of jumping over. All right. Over decades, cells become ravaged. Because they're stuffed, crowded, and overwhelmed, our mitochondria can't convert glucose to energy efficiently. The cells starve, which leads to organ dysfunction. We feel this as humans. Even though we're fueling up by eating, we suffer from lassitude. That's not a word that I use, but she used that there, lassitude. It's hard to get up in the morning and we have no energy throughout the day. We're tired. Do you know the feeling? I sure did, she says. That feeling is compounded by a second process that set off when we experience a glucose spike. And that's when she starts talking about glycation and inflammation. This may come as a surprise to you, but you are currently cooking. And this, of course, sends all of my alert systems off. I need to know what she's talking about, and immediately I'm going to be really skeptical. But let's keep reading, because I've been through this book the whole way before, and I really appreciate it. Inside our body, from the moment we are born, things literally brown, albeit very slowly. When scientists look at the ribcage cartilage of babies, it's white. Once a human reaches 90 years old, that same cartilage is brown. Interesting. In 1912, a French chemist by the name of Louis Camille Maillard described and gave his name to this phenomenon, now known as the Maillard reaction. He discovered that browning happens when a glucose molecule bumps into another type of molecule. That causes a reaction. The second molecule is then said to be glycated. When a molecule is glycated, it's damaged. So there's another new word. All right. Okay, fructose molecules glycate things 10 times as fast as glucose. And I'm just going to skip through really quick a couple different things. We can go through a book study on this if you would like. I'm very happy to. There's so much really great information in this book. But we need to talk about this whole thing because obviously it's very important. How can we stay away from these glucose spikes? Why do they happen? Not what happens when they come, but why do they happen and how can I combat this problem? The combination of too many free radicals, you remember that term, oxidative stress, and glycation leads to a generalized state of inflammation in the body. Inflammation is a protective measure. It's the result of the body trying to defend itself against invaders. But chronic inflammation is harmful because it turns against our own body. Okay, so let me just sum this up for why it was important for me and my whole cancer journey and such. So after I went through the cancer treatment for several months, I had a huge reaction to it that filled my mouth with sores. From what I understand from the oncologist and all the different specialists that were helping me out going through that journey, it was extremely rare that I could possibly have this particular reaction. So my body, my mouth, everything about me was very inflamed. Everything's swollen. Like my cheeks were all swollen. So I couldn't put my teeth down without putting my fingers in and pulling my cheeks out to make sure that I wouldn't chomp down on them. Just really bad stuff. So after that whole journey, which, like I said, sugar and stress and all of that had to be, absolutely must be part of the way that I got to cancer. But since then, I noticed that if I don't eat right, if I have, if I wake up and I see, I don't know, like a piece of chocolate of some certain kind in my kitchen while I'm making my coffee or waiting for the coffee pot to finish, then, and if I eat that, then I notice my mouth starts to swell a little bit, and I'm extra sensitive to it is what I'm getting at. So let's talk about how this all kind of wraps up. Inflammation can also be driven by, and I'm really sorry for saying this, driven by alcohol, smoking, stress, like I said, leaky gut syndrome, that's a whole other thing, and substances released by body fat. Chronic inflammation is the source of most chronic illnesses such as stroke, chronic respiratory diseases, heart disorders, liver disease, see, that was mom, obesity, and diabetes. 3 out of 5 people will die of an inflammation-based disease. All right, so we see the importance of it all. Let's talk about why, like what causes it. Let's see. She, at the beginning of this book, she has her story about how she got there. And the cynicism that I naturally have was quickly broken down because page by page, even paragraph by paragraph, the way that she processed what she was presented with, she reacted exactly the way that I would have reacted. And she ended up with one of the glucose monitors on her arm, and she was able to directly do scientific studies on herself and then on a wider group of people. And from there, it's just amazing. So anyway, you're going to have to just see that in the book yourself. But, okay, well, a recent study showed that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. I'm going to read that again. A recent study showed that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. 88% of Americans are not. So they're on a glucose roller coaster without knowing it. And these are some of the symptoms that you can have if your body is out of whack like that because of all of the glucose spikes that you have. If you need to lose weight, are you trying to lose weight but finding it difficult? Do you have extreme hunger pangs during the day? Do you feel agitated or angry when you're hungry? Do you need to eat every few hours? Do you feel shaky, lightheaded, or dizzy? Do you crave sweet things? Do you feel sleepy mid-morning or mid-afternoon, or are you tired all the time? Just can't, your get up and go has got up and went. That's a really old saying. Do you have energy crashes where you break out in a sweat or get nauseous? Do you suffer from acne or other skin conditions? Anxiety, depression, mood disorders, brain fog, and it goes on and on and on. They even say acid reflux. That's interesting. And this can be also linked with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. All right. Yeah. Well, let's see. Glucose isn't everything. And I appreciate that she's making this statement. So make sure that you listen. As important as it is that we're talking about glucose, I want you to hear these other things. There are other factors that determine our health besides glucose, and they're sleep, stress, exercise, emotional connection, medical care, and more. So if you look through the 6 dimensions of health and wellness, you see every single one of those 6 dimensions must be attended to, even just for your health, the glucose damage, all of that stuff. All right, so 10 minutes of moderate physical activity after a meal reduces the glucose spike of that meal. So that's a good thing. And by the way, I'm going to give you 10 tips, 10 hacks, as she calls them, in just a couple minutes. Let's see. Trying to find why we eat more glucose than before. That's actually chapter 4. Basically, the way that we have food available to us now as compared to 50 years ago or even 100 years ago. Can you imagine 1925? People extremely different than they are now in their healthiness and such. So much more exercise. They ate straight from their own kitchens. Anyway, all of that stuff. So, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and skip that section if you will allow me and just go straight to the hacks, what we can do to, without reducing what we eat, just putting it in a different order or following these hacks, we're going to be able to stave off all of those horrible effects of glucose spikes that we heard about. Okay. Excuse me one moment. I knew I should have put the tabs in there. All right, so the first hack is to eat the foods in the right order, which is basically what I was talking about as the topic for this entire podcast. Are you ready to hear the order? First, you eat your fiber, then protein, then fat, and the sugars, complex or simple, last. Okay, I'll say it again. Fiber first, then protein, then fat, or sometimes the fat is with the protein, and then the glucose. Okay? Fiber has 3 superpowers. This is important. Obviously, this is the first thing that you eat every time you eat anything, so make sure you're listening. First, it reduces the action of alpha amylase, the enzyme that breaks starch down into glucose molecules. Secondly, it slows down the gastric emptying. When fiber is present, food trickles from sink to pipe more slowly. Okay. Finally, it creates a viscous mesh in the internal intestine, whatever, in the small intestine. This mesh makes it harder for glucose to make it through to the bloodstream. In other words, basically, it slows everything down and ends up being kind of a filter. So if you eat your fiber first, you're going to feel fuller faster anyway. And it slows down the effect of glucose. I didn't say it takes away the effect. It slows it down in time. All right. Then foods containing fat also slow down gastric emptying. And by the way, gastric means your stomach, not your belly, but your actual stomach where the food sits. Okay. So foods containing fat also slow down gastric emptying. So eating them before carbs rather than after carbs, i.e. complex carbohydrates or simple carbohydrates, the glucose spikes, whatever, also helps flatten the glucose curves. When she says curves, by the way, she's talking about several of you can see she's very scientific. I forget what her degree is in. I should look that up. I'll look it up in a minute. But she shows the spikes and such and how they happen. So that's what she's calling curves. Yeah, so by the way, when I had the privilege of spending so much time with my mom and my dad at their doctor's appointments, and there were many, many, many doctor's appointments, especially nearing the ends of their lives. They had an amazing cardiologist who I believe retired just a couple of months ago. And when we were in there, just as a secondary note, and we were getting ready to leave the office, I asked him, well, the heart diet, as it was pushed so hard years ago, like low fat, low sugar, make sure that you only have I think it was 2 eggs a week or something, or else you're going to cause yourself to have a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. I said, well, what is it that is true about this information? And why isn't, it goes completely against what the heart diet did. And he said, without batting an eye, carbs are killing us. I thought, oh, well, wait, what? So here today, we're going to be talking about just, the very superficial information about all of this, and ways to just combat all of the terrible implications from the glucose spikes and such. All right. The slower the trickling of glucose into our bloodstream, and remember the fiber and the fat content, slow it down, the flatter our glucose curves are, and the better we feel. We can eat exactly the same thing, but by eating carbs last, we make a big difference in our physical and mental well-being. What's more, when we eat foods in the right order, our pancreas produces less insulin. This is an interesting thing that I learned. Steve Jobs, for some reason I couldn't remember his last name. Steve Jobs, obviously was a very extreme person. And I read about him before, and I watched the documentary and such about him. He went a very long time of eating nothing but fruit. And my understanding is he ended up passing away from pancreatic cancer. Then when Ashton Kutcher was playing Steve Jobs in the Steve Jobs movie, he thought, well, he was just going to go ahead and put Steve Jobs' shoes on and just act completely like him and see, just embody him, so that he has his as good of a performance in the movie as possible, as accurate and authentic. He ended up so sick, Ashton did, that they had to stop filming, from what I remember. He was just eating nothing but fruit also, and it was pancreatitis. So that's not something we want to do. So that was an interesting thing. But to get back into this, when we eat foods in the right order, our pancreas produces less insulin. Okay. So let's read. Well, let's not do that. We're getting on to. Well, that was the first hack anyway, eating your foods in the right order. Then the second hack, you'll like this because it makes perfect sense. It's basically a sub point to what she just said. And that is to add a green starter to all your meals. And she says, I know what you're probably thinking as you read the title above. This is the exact same as the previous hack. Eat your veggies first. No, this hack is on another level, she says. I'm talking about adding a dish at the beginning of your meals. So wait, she's telling us to eat more. Did you hear that? You will eat more than you usually do and flatten your glucose curves in the process. So that's good, right? So eat foods in the right order: fiber, protein, fat, then carbs at the end. Now, the second hack is to add food. I love that. Don't tell me to not do something. Tell me to do more of something. That's going to work better for me. So add a green starter to your meal. So doesn't matter what, a salad, a little bit of either raw or cooked broccoli. Very easy to do. The third hack is probably going to be your favorite one. Ready for this? Stop counting calories. If you follow the hack from the previous chapter, you will start adding calories to your meal in the form of a green starter. If you're hoping to shed pounds, you may wonder, is that really a good idea? Won't adding calories make me gain weight? The short answer, no. The long answer involves understanding more about the types of calories we're eating and lighting things on fire. We don't have a whole lot of time to go through all of this chapter about what she's talking about, but I personally have seen that I could eat 2,000 calories of ho-hos or whatever, donuts, whatever, and have a very different effect on the scale than if I eat 2,000 calories a day of the way that she's talking about, a salad and even dressing, whatever. It doesn't matter what kind of dressing, whatever dressing I want, whatever toppings I want, just the salad, and then a good protein like chicken breast, chicken thighs, a steak possibly, and then having the dessert at the end of the meal. Then the scale weighs very, very differently. And that's what she's talking about. It's the types of calories you're eating. Then hack number 4 is it's called flatten your breakfast curve. Now, this one was an interesting one. There's some discussion in the scientific community surrounding all of this problem about the obesity epidemic in America and such. The intermittent fasting and all the different ways that you can consciously get healthier in the way that you eat, whatever. But I'll just read what she says. The campus of Stanford University in California is home to a team of scientists who specialize in the study of continuous glucose monitoring. That's that glucose monitor that you see on the backside of people's arms. And it constantly tracks everything. And most people have apps on their phone that will alert them if their blood sugar goes either too low or too high. Specifically, they set out to test the commonly accepted belief that unless you are diabetic, your glucose levels should be of no concern. So they were checking it. Second, and perhaps more controversially, they wanted to test a practice that has become a cultural norm, that cereal is good for breakfast is good for you. Cereal for breakfast. So they wanted to check that. Who doesn't love cereal for breakfast? I love cereal. That's one of my favorite foods. So 20 participants were recruited, both men and women. None of them had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Their fasting glucose, you guys have all done that before. You've gotten your blood sugar checked through a blood test and made sure that you were fasting for several hours before that. Usually it's, 8 to 12 hours, whatever. But their fasting glucose, as measured once a year by their doctor, was in the normal range. They arrived on a weekday morning at the lab to take part in the experiment, which consisted of eating a bowl of cornflakes with milk while wearing a continuous glucose monitor. The results of the study were alarming. In those healthy individuals, a bowl of sugar sent their glucose levels into a zone of deregulation thought to be attainable only by people with diabetes. 16 of the 20 participants experienced a glucose spike above 140. That's the cutoff for prediabetes, by the way. And some even spiked above 200. That's insane. And it doesn't say that they ate the entire box of cereal. They just didn't. They just had a bowl of cereal, which is crazy. But that didn't mean that the participants were diabetic. They weren't. But it did mean that healthy people could spike as high as diabetics and suffer the harmful side effects those spikes cause. This discovery was groundbreaking. Now, this is what I was talking about with my mom. she did a pretty good job of keeping her weight in check almost always. She never got really big anyway, but she loved her sweets. So glucose spikes causing the free radicals, which cause the oxidative stress, which cause inflammation and all of the troubles, including the liver. And as we talked about, Steve Jobs with his, the pancreatic cancer and such, and all the heart, does everything. It's amazing. You can still be within the right weight range and cause troubles inside your body. Great deal of inflammation. The fact that a bowl of cereal causes spikes makes empirical sense. Cereal is made of either refined corn or refined wheat kernels, superheated, then rolled flat or puffed into various shapes. It's pure starch. So she's not talking about the types of cereal that they tote that they have high protein content and such like that. But that's still not going to be very high when you consider it to, compare it to having scrambled eggs or something like that. So she ends up talking about what it is that you should have for breakfast. And I know that here it is. Okay, go savory. So I like that. An ideal breakfast for steady glucose levels contains a good amount of protein, fiber, fat, and optional starch and fruit. Ideally eaten last, like we've said. So I know first thing in the morning, and she even says this in that link in the description. She even talks about how for a lot of people, it's difficult to wake up and go straight for the vegetables or the green starter. Well, that's too heavy, right? So what we need to do, if there's any way to have fiber, that's great. But eggs with butter, something like that, that's a very good way to start your day to make sure that the glucose spikes stay under control. Make sure that your breakfast contains protein. And here's another list of suggestions. Protein can be found in Greek yogurt, tofu, meat, cold cuts, fish, cheese, cream cheese, protein powder, and nuts, butter, blah, 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 eggs, all of that, as we know. All right? So that's the way we eat in a breakfast. Okay, so the first hack, eat your foods in the right order. See if you can test yourself. Can you remember the order that you're supposed to go in? And then hack 2 is add a green starter to all your meals. And yes, add calories. Hack 3 is to stop counting calories. Hack 4 is to flatten your breakfast curve that we were just talking about. And hack 5, she says, have any type of sugar you like. They're all the same. Yep, that's what she said. Of course, she is talking in reference to glucose spikes and the way that they affect. And I know she went very much into why fructose is so dangerous earlier, and we won't go into it much further. But yeah, it's important to know that basically sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar, and it's all going to affect you. So you need to do these other hacks to make sure to not have glucose spikes causing all the inflammation and the terrible effects that we read about. Okay, and hack number 6, you'll like this one too. Pick dessert over a sweet snack. So if you see a chocolate chip cookie, they just have to have because it smells so good. Sure, have it, but have it at the end of the meal. Eat in the order that you're supposed to, and you will do well. Now, the hack number 7, I've never tried myself. I don't have any yay or nay on it. To me, it makes my stomach burn to think about it. But she says, reach for vinegar before you eat. She's talking about mixing a vinegar drink and sipping it before you eat your next sweet treat. Just in case you can't wait. There's no possible way you can wait until after the end of your meal to have that chocolate chip cookie. Or, I've been in situations where I had to ask myself, okay, is it better for me to, for my glucose, for my overall health, whatever, to just completely skip a meal for many, many hours? Or do I eat something from the vending machine? Again, I took care of my parents, both of them, as they were aging and then ended up passing away. So we were in the emergency room a lot. Of course, after a while, I got very good at bringing snacks with us that were good for us. But sometimes you have no choice. So she's saying if you end up, for whatever reason you want to or need to have a sweet treat, you can have a little bit of a vinegar drink before it, and it will help keep the blood sugar spikes low. I'll let you read the book about that part, okay? Again, I have not tried it. I'm not terribly excited about the idea of starting a sugary treat with vinegar. That doesn't sound good to me, but apparently it works according to your glucose monitor. All right, so this was an interesting one too. Hack number 8. I like this one. It seems as though, even though there was not scientific backing to it, man, people used to know how to eat. How many times, or how to take care of themselves, and how many times did you hear about people going for an after dinner stroll? They would get up and go outside and go for a walk. Well, that's hack number 8. After you eat, move. Now, she's not trying to, ride the whole exercise wave. She's talking about your specific glucose curve so that you can keep it lower. So I'll read a little bit of what she's saying. Every 3 to 4 seconds, our eyelid muscles receive a message from our brain in the form of electric signals or impulses. The signals contain a simple instruction. Blink now, please, so that we can hydrate these eyes and keep reading this amazing book. By the way, the author has a great personality. You'll really enjoy her. Across our entire body, muscles contract to make us walk, lean, grab, lift, and more. Some muscles we consciously control, and others we don't. The more and the harder a muscle is to contract, whether consciously or unconsciously, the more energy it needs. The more energy it needs, the more glucose it needs. The mitochondria in the muscle cells can also use other things to make energy, such as fat. But when glucose is abundant, that's the fast, ready fuel of choice. So getting up and walking means with every new muscle contraction, glucose molecules are burned up. And we can use this fact to our advantage to flatten our glucose curves. That's pretty cool, huh? And she does end up telling us in here it was something like 10 minutes that you walk within the half hour after eating or something. Let me see. Okay, here it is. The good news is you can work out anytime up to 70 minutes after the end of your meal to curb a glucose spike. And she said workout in that particular sentence, but just going for a walk matters. I thought that was just incredible. So far, we've added calories and just eliminated sugary snacks and just put them at the end of the meal so that we can make sure to do it right. So I love that. Going for just a 10-minute walk after a meal will lessen the side effects of whatever we just ate. And the longer we work out, the more our glucose and insulin curves will flatten. Perfect. So when I worked for my dad in his office, we used to walk from his office across the bridge to the hospital. And boy, I'm sure that was at least a half a mile to walk all the way over to the cafeteria. And we would eat our lunch there together, which was wonderful memories, and then walk all the way back. So that wouldn't, if it were regular half mile, then it would be less than 10 minutes. But considering the route that we would go and everything, it was 10 minutes before we got back to the office. And it was very good for us, obviously. That explains a great deal of why my dad almost always was very trim. So go, Dad. If you're thinking of adding more walking to your daily regime, And you can do it at any time. It'll be most impactful after meals. Again, she's doing this with reference to glucose spikes. So that was good. All right. And hack number 9, if you have to snack, if you just can't stand it anymore, you've got to snack, then eat something savory as much as possible. And let's go ahead and just say hack number 10, put some clothes on your carbs. That's kind of a funny way to say it. Like I said, you'd like her personality. I don't know about you, but I don't have the time always to sit down for a meal. And often I'm hungry with no healthy food in sight. All there is around me is a corner store next to my next meeting or a coffee shop at my airport gate as I get ready for a flight. So that's pretty frustrating. The solution is simple, and I've mentioned it throughout these pages. Combine starches and sugars with fat, protein, and fiber. So here's the hack. Instead of letting carbs run around naked, put some clothes on them. Clothes on our carbs reduce how much and how quickly glucose is absorbed by our bodies. Have a brownie at your friend's place, but ask for Greek yogurt with it too. Have a bagel at the business meeting, but with some lox alongside. Buy a takeout lunch from a cafe, but add to it ingredients from the corner store salad bar, like cherry tomatoes and some nuts. If you're making cookies, add nuts to the batter. If you're serving apple crumble, offer cream to go on top. So these all sound like regular things that, I mean, people have been doing this for generations, and now we know the wisdom of it. So I love that. And inside the book, there are cheat sheets, how to become a glucose goddess when things get hard. She really just does a great job throughout the whole book. Well, I hope that this has been helpful for us to go through the book and discuss some of this. Many of us, after the long holiday season, we've gotten so that everything is derailed. Our houses need to be put back together again. The way we eat need to be put back together again. Our finances need to heal from all of the spending, all of that. So instead of doing the New Year's resolution, let's just do one meal at a time. Do it better in the ways that we heard from her about in the Glucose Revolution by Jessie Incauspé. And also make sure that you check for the link in the description so you can go to her YouTube channel and watch lots of different, she ended up with lots of podcast episodes. So it's very good. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's right. I had a little bullet point list there. Next week, I'm very excited to announce in detail a nonprofit that I am starting. It's basically a solidification of what I do naturally, but then I will be able to do it very intentionally, making sure to take care of people as best I possibly can. So please look forward to that. Please join. I'm going to be advertising that particular live stream podcast a little more than usual. Picking up the phone, contacting people and texting people, and just want to make sure everybody knows. So maybe you'd want to hear about it, hear how I can serve you as a coach, or as maybe you want to get involved in a nonprofit, but you don't want to start your own. Anyway, you'll be excited to hear about it. I'm sure of it. Thank you so much for joining this evening. I really appreciate it. We're up to, and thanks to you, and I say we on purpose, thanks to you, we are up to well over 735 views of the channel, my own channel, the videos that I have posted or the live stream podcasts. Really appreciate you coming to join. And remember why it is that we started this community online. It's because each one of us has influence, whether we want to or not. anytime that you're anywhere near any person, or even if you decide to abandon a person, you're going to have influence. You're going to have influence. How are you going to use that influence this next week? Well, what we were talking about today, is positive information. It is inspiring to you to know these helpful hacks that she has given. Perhaps just the effect of being inspired by that book, and I know this to be true, that your influence will end up being more inspiring to others around you. So my encouragement is continue to engage with this community. If you would like to have any coaching services or just a chat with me about anything, reach out through coachamypratt.com. Make sure that you are constantly looking for 1% improvement in whatever way each day. What can you do better just each day, each meal, each in conversation that you have with people? How can you make it just 1% better, so that we can take that natural influence that we have, whether we want it or not, and turn it into inspiration for others, which will end up in turn causing a ripple effect much farther outside of just ourselves. You are loved, you are important, and I very much appreciate you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful week.